these principles, during the week of Kwanzaa, families and communities come together to share feasts and to honor our ancestors and affirm the bonds between them and to celebrate the African and
Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope all and everyone is doing well. We're going to see what's going on with the Zoom right now. This is not an ETM sponsored event. Just want to let you know we're just live covering it. So this is out in Fulton County, Georgia. I don't know what's up with the audio or visual family, but it is what it is. So hopefully they'll be able to get it resolved or started soon. We're about 20 minutes in to the actual, or what's supposed to be the commission. So hopefully they'll start soon. I don't know, but thanks for joining. Appreciate you. All right, everyone. Looks like we're going to have to cut this stream. Unfortunately, uh, don't know what's going on the other end with Fulton County, but we tried to stream it live, but unfortunately, they're having some technical difficulties. So maybe next time we'll get it. But I know I think Asheville's coming up next in North Carolina. So hopefully that will be up. I think we're going to actually have the Road to Reparations show this Sunday, so check us out then. We do have a MLK Boots on the Ground coming out tomorrow, so check that out. And sorry about that, fam. I have no idea what's going on.
It looks like the address, the Pryor Street address, is also on the agenda or the announcement on their website.
For the
Yeah.
1850s, so
Oh, wait a minute.
approximately 1,501
I hear something.
enslaved people.
Uh-oh, I think we have
Within a
something.
span
Hold on
of
a
10
second.
years,
All right, we got action,
that number did
family.
increase
We got something. All
by
right, cool.
500 people, and it grew to 1,995. If you see on the bottom half of the screen, we also have we do have a donut chart on the top part that breaks it down by gender. So you see on here that we have about 734 males and 765 females for the 1850s. For the 1860s, we have about 958 males and 1,037 females. The gauge charts at the bottom shows that there were approximately 249 slave owners in the 1850s, and in the 1860s was approximately 274.
So I also want to point out, if you pay attention to the total number of enslaved, for Fulton County for 1850, it was near 1,200, 1,300, right? But when you look at Campbell County, the total number of enslaved and the rate of increase is more substantial. So you see Campbell County by 1860 has almost 2,000 people enslaved. Fulton County did not have that many enslaved people. So it just goes to show you that these numbers can be influenced by the agricultural society that they were in, and also the other pronounced history of slavery to 1832. So because it was already a formed county and then it became a part of Fulton County, so it had an established economy for chattel slavery. Yeah. So this is a visual map of what is now Fulton, just giving you a visual of where Milton and Campbell counties are, and their basic, combination. So Campbell County accounts for, the data actually accounts for Campbell County to the south and what is now Douglas counties. Campbell and Douglas was one thing in 1850. So that's why those numbers are a little bit higher. So everything west of the Chattahoochee River became, east of the Chattahoochee River became Fulton County. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. So I really kind of want to educate the public on what these numbers and names are and what they represent. So for every enslaved person and their owner, after a slave owner dies, they write a will. They want to protect their assets and their estate. In this will, they will devise and appoint an administrator of their estate. The administrator of their estate will then go forward and take a proper inventory and assessment of their property. Because enslaved people were considered property, in their inventory and assessment of their estate, there will be not only an assessment of what's in their house, the land that they own, but also the human lives that they held in bondage. So on this screen currently, you're seeing a portrait of a log cabin house, two-story log cabin house, which sat in present-day East Point, Fulton County, Georgia. Okay. Underneath it, you see 5 individuals associated with their values of appraisal. Total value being $8,500. Charlotte, Leslie, Jerry, Gilbert, and Martina. These individuals were named for the first time on this document. They'd never been named before. Why? Because on the 1850 and 1860 slave schedules. One senator in South Carolina decided that it would be erroneous for us to identify Big Jim and Little Jim. So they didn't name any enslaved people. However, in Fulton County, if you were over 95 years old, they listed your name on the slave schedules. So in this example, you see the names of enslaved people in the inventory of estate of a man named Noah Hornsby. He died during the Civil War in 1863. And you see associated Charlotte and Child. And it has in the parentheses the child's name, Busley, $2,000. Jerry, a boy, $2,000. Gilbert, a boy, $2,000. And Martina, a girl, $2,500. Right next to 350 acres of land valued at $10,000. And all the other animals and livestock on the estate. Okay, next slide, please.
Every time I say it, I get
So this is another estate that I inventoried in the early research of Homer Blackman. Homer Blackman died in 1860. This is a transcribed version of the data that was taken off a page similar to what you just saw. And it inventories 8 people: George, Aaron, Frank, Lydia, Josephine, Malvina, Georgianne, and Alice. This is the entire estate of Homer Blackman. Okay, why is this significant? This is significant because not only what I was just saying about the 1860 slave schedules, however, this information can be transferred to identify what became of the community, enslaved community, once they were emancipated. Next slide, please. What you're looking at right now is my efforts to identify this formerly enslaved family on the 1870 schedules, okay, census schedule. The 1870 census is the first census that identified formerly enslaved people by first and last name. What you're looking at is the community of enslaved people that were owned by Homer Blackman: George, Lydia, Josephine, Ellis, and Elizabeth. Lydia was pregnant with Elizabeth when that estate was taken. So that's why you don't see Elizabeth's name in that previous document, okay? So,
Mr. Smith.
yes,
If we may have you to pause for just
Okay.
a second, we don't want to suppress your wisdom
okay,
in any way. We want to ensure that that your presentation is connected with the public,
Okay.
so if you'll pause for 2
Okay.
minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm well doing. Okay. You're doing great. I have notes all on here.
thank you.
Presentation and motivate to act along. Madam Chair, while we're taking this break, I just wanted to just thank all of you who came out and who contributed in public comment. we finish with the presentation, so she will have an opportunity to address or make any kind of comments on anyone from their public comment, but just a very good meeting thus far.
And I thank the rest of you who arrived. I see you in the back. Are we connecting? All right, great. So let's go back just a little bit. If you want to go back and pick up on talking about, this would be the page.
Right, so
Yes,
it's fine.
yes, enslaved people in probate, Charlotte, Leslie, Jerry,
Okay,
Gilbert.
okay.
If you want to start with there.
Okay. I would
That's
set the
great, that would be
slides
great.
back up. I think it's 2 slides before this one. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll start fresh. So what you're looking at in this slide is a portrait of a 2-story log cabin, which sat in present-day East Point, Fulton County, Georgia. This was the home of Noah Hornsby. Noah Hornsby owned 5 people, and when he died in 1863, the executor of his estate took an inventory and assessment of everything that he owned, from livestock to human property to land. What you're seeing on this slide is the appraisal value of 5 individuals: Charlotte, Leslie, Jerry, Gilbert, and Martina. This is the first time that their names have ever been written outside of a property deed, because names on the slave schedules don't name any enslaved individual. They only name age, sex, and complexion. That's how our data scientists were able to extract that information from the census. So this is in the heat of the Civil War, and these people were appointed to take assessment to make sure that these 5 individuals would be conveyed to their next form of bondage, essentially, unless they were emancipated. The will did not direct they be emancipated. They were hired out for their labor, and or sold. So, next slide, please. In another estate, Homer Blackman's estate, he died in 1860. There's 8 individuals here listed: George, Aaron, Frank, Lydia, Josephine, Melvina, Georgianne, and Alice. Their appraisal value ranging from $1,500 to $400, from 38 years old to a mere 4 years old. So next slide, please. Mind you, that was in 1860. So the hardest challenge that African Americans who are tracing their enslaved ancestors face in reclaiming the identities of their ancestors is being able to identify who owned their families during emancipation. So what we've done in this slide is identify them on the 1870 United States Federal Census. And that same community, not comprehensively, but the majority of that community that we just assessed on the last slide, include George, Lydia, Josephine, Ellis, and Elizabeth. Lydia being pregnant with Elizabeth during the appraisal of that community, were identified by first and last name on the 1870 census. This is where most people hit a brick wall and stop in their research, because they don't know enough about what kinds of records are created from the documentation of human chattel slavery. So this is really powerful, because people who find their ancestors, if you could just get to 1870, we will provide the names of every single person that was enslaved in Fulton County to their descendants. We'll give you the names of your ancestors if you could just get to 1870. So now with that information accessible, you're able to not only identify the names of your enslaved ancestors and their former owners, but now you have a paper trail to begin with, right? Because enslaved people are considered property, you can go from that person's property to figure out who they were sold from to get into that estate. And so back in, all the way to a port of arrival or something else. So, yeah. Next slide, please. And what you are looking at on this slide is a famous site of the Queens, what's it called, slave market in downtown Atlanta. I juxtaposed this image and overlaid it to show the present day location right across from underground Atlanta in downtown. So this is the 52 Peachtree Street. This used to be address 8 Whitehall Street, and was the main slave auction site and one of the main slave auction sites in Fulton County.
In summary, this study has only begun to scratch the surface of what is possible to fully realize the impact of slavery in Fulton County, from the synthesis to the census data to the identification of the formerly enslaved. This study continues to expand our understanding of what the descendants of slavery are truly owed. Next slide, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you ask questions?
Yes, please.
So first of all, thank you very much. I'm fascinated by the research that you've done. I do have a question. So if you can't, and this is a little bit personal for me, my great-great-grandparents were enslaved in Texas and others in Mississippi. And so we don't know anything about our family history past 2 generations back. And you mentioned that if you can trace your family to 1870, then you can pick them up on the census rolls. What do you do if you can't do that?
So this is a nuanced question. There's so many different approaches that you can take. I would begin with vital records, get all your vital record information, especially Mississippi. I was responsible for releasing over 500,000 records from the Mississippi Department of Public Health into the public domain. So I can assist you with, identifying your ancestors on that Mississippi Death Index. But vital records is the door opener to extending the names of your family history. And if you can't get to 1870, that's my main response, is to try and build a paper trail, figure out what you know, don't speculate, question everything, and try and interrogate those records in the public Department of Health, depending on how recent it is. If it's 2 generations back, then it may already be in the public domain, and that you can access it at the respective local archive or state archive.
And you see these commercials about these DNA tests that find your lineage. What is your opinion on that? Are those worth it? Are they just a gimmick? I mean, for somebody to tell me that your ancestry came from West Africa, that doesn't really do me any good, right? Is there any way to narrow it down, or is it, what's your opinion on that?
Okay, so the most tangible use for autosomal DNA tests and other DNA tests created by, Ancestry and 23andMe and sites like that is the genetic matches that you get. You share genetic relatives with these people because you have common ancestors with them. So if you're able to identify common surnames in your tree, or nobody looks familiar, you can still separate the matches from parent 1 and parent 2 once you identify which maternal or paternal are associated with parent 1 and parent 2. Then you can start to build a relationship with those genetic matches and make scientific and educated assumptions about, I don't want to say assumptions because science is DNA is DNA, but you can make inferences about how close the shared common ancestor is. So once you're able to do that, you can use that information to approach federal, state, local documents that may be associated with those names.
And one last question. So the obvious names that you have here, and I'm sure there are others, have you been able to, or will you be able to connect them to people who are alive today here in Georgia?
Absolutely. That's also, I failed to mention. Yes, that's the exact purpose of that. So theoretically speaking, I could take I've already identified over 300 people in the estates. I'm not even through the probate book yet. So I can take that information, go to the 1870 census and then trace the descendants, look at those marriage licenses, look at the migration patterns of the family, because we know there's a mass migration to Chicago, New York, Ohio, areas like that, from Atlanta. And with that information, we can, use that to activate some tangible use for the descendant community.
And I said, but I just want one more question. So if you, when you present this information to a family, they're able to trace back, and you connect their lineage, what is their reaction?
Mixed reactions. I think anger is one of the first. And then, they start to go through a grieving process. And then I feel like only once we understand that they exist and they do have names, that we can start to heal as a community and start to make informed decisions about how we want to experience our future.
Thank you.
You all know I have a lot of questions, so I'll let you. Okay, so Fulton County was not established until 1853, and you showed us census reports for 1850 for surrounding counties. Can you share with us how do you have names of individuals from the 50s, from the 1850s for Fulton County slaveholders?
Correct. So in 1850, the townships that we all extracted the data from was actually in DeKalb County. And the areas that became Fulton County had those townships, so Atlanta, Stones District, Buckhead District. Some are familiar, some have been renamed. Those names of slave owners are in the data reflected in these slides. And I actually did research in DeKalb County, and sometimes it'll even say move to Fulton County, or it'll be recorded in DeKalb County's books, and never was moved to Fulton County. And I found that as well, right around that 1851, 1852 period.
And can you share with everyone again, those parts of the surrounding counties that became, or townships that became part of Atlanta? I mean, they became a part of Fulton County by 1853.
Sure. Okay, so Campbell County and Milton County did not become a part of Fulton County until the 1930s. However, present day Fulton County was originally DeKalb County, and the parts of Fulton County that are represented in the data are Stones District, Atlanta, Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and Casey's district, right? So about 8 different districts or townships.
Well, considering that there wasn't a slave schedule for Fulton County for 1850, if you were compiling, or if you were to compile, it seemed like you've already started compiling the names of slaveholders for Fulton County from the 50s. Can you share how you were able to gather that information or names of individuals? Can you explain the method that you took in order to compile that data? Because there's no list of slaveholders for Fulton County prior to 1860. Can you share that?
And that's really profound, because there's a lot of other counties that they've already identified all their slave owners. This is the first comprehensive list of slave owners for what was DeKalb and now Fulton that exists. So, and I believe it was like 249, something like that, for 1850. So, and then in 1860, we see the migration to the Fulton County center of Georgia, and I think it goes from 249 to 270 or 290, if I'm not mistaken on the data. But this information is extracted directly from the pages of the slave schedules. So the slave schedules is its own thing. 1850, 1860, they had their own, they being the slave owners and their families, and any other free person that was living in Fulton County had their own federal census. And then they had a census just for the enslaved. So in that information, we were able to, well, I was able to take that information on the free schedule of the population and identify family trees of people and individuals on ancestry, and trace the descendants of the slave owners as well. So that has definitely expanded the legitimacy to this research and confirmation, because with that information, we know, okay, during the Civil War, there's a lot of slave owners that flee Sherman's army to preserve. They wanted to take their enslaved communities further south to avoid emancipating people who were enslaved in Fulton County. And some died on the way, some made it, and then they stayed there until the 13th Amendment was ratified. But that's how we were able to extract that data and create a comprehensive list of every slave owner in Fulton County.
Well, you have the names for 1860 from the slave schedule. How do you fill in the names from the names of slaveholders from 53 to 60 to 1850 to 1860?
Okay.
How do you go about doing that?
Okay, so censuses are taken every 10 years, and the next census will be 1860. So in the 1860 slave schedules, a new list is created and enumerated. The man who enumerated the 1860 census was the slave owner himself. So he took a proper assessment of every slave owner and enslaved communities by age, sex, and complexion.
And when you put up this wonderful photograph of the Law Academy, and it's rare to actually find a sketch of a house. And I'm wondering if the house of the slaveholder, is this a slave dwelling? And I'm looking at it and I'm reading the inventory, and I guess it's assessment of the estate. And I'm looking at the value of the individuals that you mentioned, and I want to call their names: Charlotte, Busley, Jerry, Gilbert, Martino. The total value is $8,500. But if you were to look at the value of the land, the 350 acres of land that these individuals tilled the soil and worked on and produced goods, provided services, created additional wealth for this family, the total value of that person's land is $10,000, which means that the total value of the individuals who make up part of this estate is 85% of the total value of the land. The cow is valued at $175, which comes to, I believe, 1/12 of an individual, of an adult. So 12 cows will make up the value of the value of one human being, of one adult.
Correct.
So, just looking at that is very moving, but I'm reading the 350 acres of land and I'm thinking about the 5 individuals, including children, who tilled that soil, who worked the land and produced goods for this family. And then for them not to be removed from the record, you find them again in 1870. And they're trying their best to live their free lives in Fulton County. And that's so moving. And then to see this picture of this infamous slave auction house at 8 Whitehall Street, which is now Peachtree Street. I see that there's Wall Street, that's the intersection, and how strangely that is Wall Street. If you look closely, you see the railroad tracks. And this lets me know that this railroad track is the domestic middle passage in the United States, that this is how individuals are being trafficked in. And I can imagine the bodies coming up Peachtree Street in shackles and hearing the sound of it. I've been placed into this house where their bodies will be sold. And you all did such a great job in providing these beautiful graphs. And I love that you provided the gender, the number of males and females, and they were equal. And I'm thinking about the young girls and young boys, the teenagers that are inside this slave auction house. They're equal in number. And we know about the slave yards that existed in downtown Atlanta. And I'm just imagining, like, as people walking to work, they're going on through their daily lives, that they could very well be passing by a group of individuals and sizing young boys and girls up to be purchased, to be traded, to be borrowed off of. And what is really remarkable about the graphs, if we were to look at, and just pick any of them, you did such a wonderful job. at Atlanta Township, I'm looking at the number of males and females. And there's a sum of 522 enslaved individuals. Can you explain for me like how the age drops off and who's the majority of the enslaved individuals, the approximate age group?
So the majority of enslaved individuals within the Atlanta Township were female. And I would say it was about an average of 320 females and 202 males.
And what's the approximate age group? Are there mainly teenagers? Are they in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s?
We have the highest amount of males at the age 30, between the ages of 30 and 40. And then there are also, bear with me one moment. There are also some individuals, I saw while analyzing the data, that there were some individuals just as old as 70 years old. I thought was quite impressive with the play.
Yeah, but the numbers drop off so dramatically. And it makes me wonder, you see how people, what becomes of them? Do they die? Do they run away?
All of the above. Yeah,
All of the above.
can occur.
So people could be worked to death and die at a very young age, relatively speaking.
Something I want to point out is
Yes.
that there is another schedule that the federal census taker would have taken called a mortality schedule. In that mortality schedule, you'll see if any enslaved persons died underneath the care or ownership of their former owner. So there's a whole other data set we haven't even taken inventory of yet.
There's so much here. I'm gonna pass it on to my other colleagues to ask questions, but this is wonderful, and there's no seminal work on the study of slavery in Atlanta.
Right.
So I really appreciate this, and I could go on, I'm gonna let my colleagues take it over.
I just want to put something on the record, because me and you have had a couple of conversations offline. I have, talked about this brilliant group of young Black excellence to everybody that I could probably talk to, but I've been excited. The executive committee, for the record, had a brief preview. And so I've just been excited about seeing the full thing. But I do want to put on the record, is anybody familiar with a news story out of Fulton County that is national and international from about a month ago, where the chief probate court judge found these wills of slave owners? If anybody in here saw that, can you raise your hand? Well, considering that we're doing this work, it just kind of falls right in place. And so I just want to share with the public and put it on the record that Madam Chair, myself and Christopher, we actually met with that particular judge. And not only has she agreed to open up the records for Christopher to just dive in and dissect. It's such a lethal weapon. They're not just Christopher, Luther, and Abby. But I want to make sure it's understood. There's also, correct, Madam Chair, a warehouse full of documents that we will have access to as well. So you guys already see what this awesome group of Black excellence does, digging and finding information. So now they're going to have access to a very targeted warehouse, or very targeted area, meaning focusing on Fulton County. So I just want to put that out there on the record. What a blessing in disguise that records from probate court pop up. So as Madam Chair said, it's just the ancestors speaking.
And I know you have something to say. This is.
Microphone.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I'd like to share something with you all. I had the pleasure, and it's debatable, I'm sure, of meeting a descendant of the slave owners of my great grandparents. I think that's what level they were on. And he showed me a copy of the will where his ancestor willed my great grandparents to his brother when he was done. And I say it's debatable when I say the pleasure of it, because he was hesitant. He didn't think I would want to meet him and talk to him, but I looked at it as an opportunity, you know, to learn more, to gain more information. And, you know, just stacking the information, like you said, you can just get to 1870. And so that's the way I looked at it. But I mean, you know, when you see them on paper, somebody owned them and somebody's just handing them off, like I handed this bottle of water. There's a feeling there. I still don't know what to call that feeling, but at the same time, these are your people and you see them. It makes them more real.
So I have another question. So we talked a little bit about what it's like when a family of an enslaved person finds out their ancestry. Have you ever confronted a person whose family were slave owners? And what was their reaction when they learned of their family history?
Well, if they're on ancestry.com and they're building family trees, you know, it's interesting. Some people don't even have the slave schedules where their ancestors owned slaves, whereas other people do. Just recently, as I was preparing my PhD application, I reached out to a woman who had recorded the family of my own enslaved ancestors, and she had done substantial research. And I said, I need to talk to this woman because there's something that's missing from this story. Because I wanted to understand where my ancestors were purchased. They were enslaved in Louisiana and Mississippi. So I wanted to reach out to her so she could expound a little bit about how my ancestors were acquired. And at first she was very hesitant. She was like, I don't know who this guy is. Who are you talking about? You know? And eventually, once I broke down to her, like, look, this is you, this is them, this is how you related. They're in your tree. And she was able to confirm, like, okay, yes, this is my great aunt's husband, you know, something like that, and this is his family, and I've been researching them for a while. And we kind of began to collaborate on certain parts of that research. And while she had the origin story of the ancestors, of her white ancestors, I was seeking the origin story of my enslaved African ancestors. And she was able to fill in some information for me, but I could tell that it lacked depth. You know, what she understood lacked depth because what she understood was not the fullest extent of the substantial nature of how many people. It was over 150 people on this plantation. So she didn't really understand what was driving the sustainability of that family. And I could talk all day about this, but I went to Emory here in Atlanta and pulled the financial account papers of that family. And I was able to see the direct revenue and profits that they made every single year and how much they were paying in taxes every single year on each enslaved person. So situations like that kind of open your eyes to how, this information isn't lost forever. The Civil War did not destroy everything. And that narrative's always been there, and it's just been waiting to be built back.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, I wanted to commend you all on your work. Something that stands out to me from my background is the effort that goes into taking these records and making them machine readable, because they weren't to start with. So to build those visualizations and also to situate that in the legacy of Black data activism that has been done in this city and across the Southeast, across the country, is really powerful. And we call that counter data action. And I think it's also, important to note that these records that are federal and they're county mean that the federal government and the county government are responsible. They have a role to play in making these accessible and preserving them and making them public. And the fact that you all are doing this work to make it public, make it machine readable, so that other people can continue to build on this research is really amazing, really critical. So thank you.
Yes. I'm used to my Jamaicanness of not speaking
It's okay.
I'm like, I'm not enough. So one thing that I'm thinking through is around the fact that we're speaking at a very high level, right? In a lot of the communities that would be impacted by what is created here, they're not like, internet is an issue, literacy is an issue. Like there's a lot of barriers. So I just want to see like how do you go, like what is that, right? Or what are we thinking through in that space? And then also through your work in what you're currently looking at, right? We have some information around like what the value is of an enslaved person at the time. So when you're thinking through long term, what would be a thought around like if reparations were to be done, this is what it is based on this information, because I also feel like we have these conversations and we have these conversations again at a very high level. But for the person, what's good for the 8-year-old is good for the 88-year-old. So for the 8-year-old and the 88-year-old to understand how this impacts them, if we could just come down a little for people to be able to really understand what this is. Because I do think, like everyone else, it's a beautiful document. I love it. However, I'm thinking about those barriers.
Sure, so, okay. Where do I want to start? Okay, so websites like Ancestry.com are behind a paywall. And I personally have a problem with having to pay to re-find your ancestors. We didn't have any power in that, so not gonna throw shade. But there's another website called FamilySearch.org. And FamilySearch.org is the world's largest family history library. You can create a free account and access a lot of information at your fingertips. But if you don't have internet access, that most of the records are in your local library or genealogy section or room. However, what would be really optimal and ideal is to create a research center here in Fulton County so people can access this information and these records on site, up close and in person. Yeah.
Thank you. And two final, one comment and one question. Okay. And thank you for that comment. Without providing an academic response, I just want you to give me this real response, as honest and authentic as you can provide. What was your response as you were going through this process and reading these documents? I mean, was it new for you? Can you just share the process? Did you experience anything in the process as you're coming across names and learning stories?
I want everybody to answer because I feel like it's something so personal, so I'll start with it.
Absolutely. Through our research, diving into it, we explored a number of files and a number of logs on Ancestry, and it was quite amazing to see the age range of the people who were enslaved. Considering the fact that someone 60 years old today, like our average grandparent, like you couldn't imagine that person being enslaved and to work every day, from birth until now. So I thought it was quite amazing. Yeah. Horrifying.
And another thing as well, like extracting the data, seeing how many kids were enslaved, like born into slavery. They didn't have no choice, like it's just crazy to see. And we even had a couple of like older, like adults, 103-year-olds as well. That's shocking as well. Like how could somebody that old be enslaved? Like it was crazy and devastating to see.
Hit it on the nail. Just think about this. you're 103 years old in 1850, 1860. You witnessed the nation before it was a nation. I can't even describe to go from a place of complete rural, indigenous people are walking around because this is their home, right? And to go from a place of bondage before, the 13 colonies are the 13 colonies, into something that is fully or fastly, rapidly organizing is profound. I don't have enough time. But to see, I deal with this stuff all the time. And I regularly have to numb myself in order to do this research because it's so emotional. And in order to think rationally and apply the correct methodology, I have to think about all the possibilities. And there are many when it comes to properly investigating and reclaiming the identities of enslaved people. Because not every person was enslaved. Some people were, I'm sorry, not every person was enslaved by white people. Some people were enslaved by the civilized tribes, okay, of indigenous descent. So the complex is so much more, and the narrative is so much more complex than we give it credit for. But in this particular project, I thought it's unusual because Fulton County wasn't a thing until 1853. So you have a smaller time period and time frame to assess the information. So to see how quickly rapidly these numbers are increasing and the mass migration to Fulton County, and to see that there's centenarians that are still being marched from Savannah to Fulton County, in this time period, and all over Georgia and all over, the rest of the country is really heartbreaking to see, to think about people walking in chains across states to this newly developing area. So emotional, but necessary.
And then, I'm sorry, it's one final thing. If you make this presentation, someone may ask, well, what does this mean to Fulton County in this study? And I'm looking at Mr. Blackman and his estate, total value of the estate. If you were to look at the land, the cow, some of the other farm animals and those who were enslaved, it comes to a little less than $19,000. And of the total amount of the value of his total estate, almost half of his total estate comes from individuals who are enslaved. And so the county received taxes from the land and from those who were enslaved. So there's a benefit to the county for having individuals enslaved, and we need to know what is that value. And we will also begin to see how Fulton County is part of the slaveocracy.
Correct.
The website you said was familysearch.com?
.org.
.org.
Well, before our last presenter, do any of you mind, can you share your ages? Because I've mentioned a lot about the youth. I just wanted on the record, can you mention it, please?
Okay, so I'm 24.
I'm 24 as well.
And I'm 28.
28, 24, and 24. My last question. We know that I'll be 50 this year, Madam Chair. And we know that people have been fighting on behalf of reparations long before I was born. We know that right now we're trying to strengthen this generational cohesiveness, camaraderie. Please just make it plain. Why at 24, 24, and 28? And the dedication that you guys are obviously displaying. So much other stuff you could be doing at 24. I know what I was doing at 24 and 28. Please just put on record, why is this work important and what do you hope to see?
Okay, so this, that's a loaded question. This work is very personal. I think in order to understand myself as a Black man in America, I need to understand what I'm fighting against. I need to understand who and what the enemy does. And unless, or else I'll do the work on behalf of the enemy. So I want to make sure that not only do I understand that legacy, but the resilience in who we are, the tenacity to come over so much and understand better the spirituality that we possess.
Honestly, when I heard about the task force, I was very interested, like, cause I never heard of a group of individuals, like, actually aiming to getting reparations back to the community. And just hearing about it was very interesting and it kind of intrigued me into doing this research. Cause I feel like it's very essential for Black people to get their reparations back. It's long overdue. So I'm glad that, hopefully soon that everybody will get their reparations back.
Absolutely. As a part of pursuing my master's in data science and meeting Dr. Karchi, I felt that this opportunity was God ordained for me to be a part of it. And I'm just honored to do work for my people. And I'm also all for my education and furthering my education. And a lot of our ancestors weren't able to get their education. And so that's why today I strive to get my master's and my doctorate degree for them.
Yeah, appreciate y'all on that.
Well, we thank you all. We have one more presenter tonight. Hopefully we don't get kicked out soon. But I will, Mr. Coleman, can you introduce the next presenter?
The next presenter we have is Latron Price. Latron Price actually contributed during public comment of our last meeting, and I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, his area of expertise has to deal with agriculture.
That's correct. Correct. I want to see if no, I think I'm gonna connect this so you can see it, but
Yeah, I don't think we can.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
We'll put it on the website.
Okay, fantastic.
If you share it later, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful to be a witness, to listen and hear and send such warm energy your way. And we definitely want to find ways to support you, either with the commission here and this task force or just business people in the community, because this is really important work, and we're very grateful for your presentation. I am.
Mr. Price, step to the center.
Yes, sir. Fantastic. Just greetings, good people. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to come to speak with you all. Get to see colleagues and community members and folks who are very interested in the process of reparations. Give a quick introduction of who I am. My name is Latron Price. I reside here in Fulton County, city of Atlanta, and I've worked over the last many years with Dr. Joe Beasley, who's here in Atlanta, has been an advocate. And with Dr. Beasley, I've had the great fortune of traveling in many parts of the world and see the dynamics of the imbalance, injustice of our communities, Black folks all over the world. And it also impacted just human beings as we went to India and saw what's going on in India and in other parts of the world. So before I start and just coming off of that, that's heavy. That's really heavy for me personally. And so in the area I want to talk about is agriculture, which is such a swing between the two. So I want to just take a moment and just do a quick exercise to really connect. And in that space, as I close my eyes and I take a deep breath, I'm reminded that I'm breathing in oxygen, and that oxygen is flammable. And as it comes into my lungs, the lungs purify the oxygen. And then that oxygen that's purified goes into my heart. My heart is contracting, causing heat to heat up. And that heat is exploding fire at temperatures that causes the electrical charges to run down my spine and into my brain. And in that heartbeat, I am reminded there's a little tube that comes out of the heart that goes into my scrotum. And in that space, when I met my wife and we had children, my children were ignited as the semen ignited in the egg. And in that, there was an electrical charge of life. In that electrical charge of life, when I look at my children, I'm looking at my heart. And that presentation reminded me of how we are the physical flesh of our fathers and our mothers through the womb, and we're born of a womb. And that history is tied into us, and there's no separation. So this very spiritual and very practical and physical space, as I'm witnessing these people sitting on this panel, I'm reminded that we are all one wonderful community that is trying to heal and repair, and we are the flesh of our fathers, those who are ancestors of the enslaved and those who enslaved. We are here today and we're alive. So I wanted to connect to that because that's reminding me of my grandfather, Papa Berry, and I realized I'm Papa Berry as I'm sitting in here who was an enslaved man in Alabama, and I want to know more about him now, and these resources are becoming more available and prevalent, and this is critical to the process. The area I want to talk about is agriculture and why agriculture is so critically important to this conversation around reparations. And I have a presentation that developed that kind of really discusses the process of reparations in particularly Georgia and Fulton, people and land. And this conversation really is about land and the use of land and the stewardship of land. And why land is the single most important aspect of reparations, particularly in Fulton County. Fulton County encompasses a total land area of 534 square miles, of which 342,080 acres. Only a small portion is dedicated to agricultural use. Undeveloped vacant land, approximately 107,000 acres, which is 30% are undeveloped and vacant lands today. That's right here in Fulton County. To look at the origins of this process of how land was distributed and where it originated from. Starting with this doctrine of discovery in 1452. The international law that gave European colonial nations the authority to claim title over indigenous lands they discovered, issued by Pope Nicholas V. The Portuguese crown, which gave Christian explorers the right to claim newly discovered lands and territories for the Christian monarch. The James Oglethorpe Plan, which started the state of Georgia, which is so critical to the discussion because King George II chartered the colony in Georgia in 1732, largely based on Oglethorpe's proposal for its design. Oglethorpe envisioned the colony as a place for resettlement of debtors, of British prisoners, in the worthy poor, as quoted, to have the chance of rebuilding their lives. The plan laid out systems of agriculture based on small family farms and prohibited slavery in Georgia in initial stages. Though slavery was later allowed during 1751. Citizens were granted plots of land in Fulton County for free, with standardized sizes and shapes surrounding the city. Agricultural practices were tightly regulated under the plan. The plan sought to foster a utopia society, including provisions for education, defense, and regulation of alcohol in a society. I pulled a map of land from the Library of Congress, particularly owned by Black people from 1970 to 1900. And this particular map is actually dated 1899, post-transatlantic slave trade. In Fulton County, in the different areas, there was 1,950 landowners. In one part, in the northern part, there was 307 landowners. And then the city of Atlanta had 1,140 acres, landowners, and most of these are farms. In the southern part of the county, we had 2,198 acres. And then as far down in one of your great areas, part of South Fulton and Palmetto, there's 5,335 acres of land that was owned by Black community. And when we look at these numbers have drastically shrunk. So not only was the transatlantic slave trade so detrimental to the community, as the laws changed and systems were restructured and enslaved people acquired land, then the land was stolen from through a number of different systems. And that is the perpetual reality on why you walk down Martin Luther King, Peachtree, all throughout the county, you will see homeless people that are all descendants of the enslavement of the transatlantic slave trade. Many of them are. The foundation of the economics in the West is started off of a basic foundation under King James Version of the Bible. And so when King George II sent James Oglethorpe, he sent him with a book. And the book he sent him was the King James Version of the Bible. In the first page of the book, I'm gonna skip down to chapter 1. Genesis 1, verse 26-30. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likenesses. And let them have dominion over the fish of the seas. This is the tilapia. This is the mahi-mahi. This is the grouper. This is the great Georgia snapper. And over the fowl of the air, that's our poultry. And our poultry industry is extremely well-to-do. Over the cattle, this is our lamb, our goat, our beef. Over the earth, that's our limestone, our granite, our minerals, our mining. And over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, including my black cells and many of your cells. So God created man in his own image, and the image of God created he him, male and female created he them, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it. This is to manage it. And have dominion over the fish of the seas, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth on the earth. And behold, God had given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which there is fruit yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to every creeping thing that creep on the earth, where there is life, I've given you every herb bearing meat. So when I read this and I began to understand, connect the dots between what is our spiritual reality in our world of this business world, this agricultural world that is really driving the enslavement of people. So here in this system, particularly the state of Georgia, and this is what I think is the driving home factor for this committee. There are very unique realities in this state when it comes to agriculture. The state of agriculture, the state of Georgia's agricultural system probably had the most influence over wealth than any other office or organization in the state. So as you're doing your research, I am here to compel you to make sure you connect to the Department of Ag and extract data. Meet with the commissioner. His name is a young man named Tyler. And Tyler's role is very unique. He's the steward of what God gave everybody to breathe. And in that process, there is some actual facts. In 2021, food fiber production in related industries represented $73.2 billion in output to Georgia's $1.2 trillion economy in 1 year. So you're looking at $1.2 trillion. It represents over 340,000 jobs. That 1.2 trillion shows that there's an inequity that is continued when it comes to wealth from the foundation of free labor, free raw materials, and now we have companies as an example. And we put together a list of companies that operate in Fulton County specifically, and their integrated relationship between business and the ag system. We use Coca-Cola as one of the great examples, and Coca-Cola's, does a great job in many ways, but they have a history that needs to be accounted for. Coca-Cola was intrinsically tied into multiple supply chains, distribution networks, regional economies, agricultural systems, and had overt origins in the dependence on slavery over prior centuries. This inconvenient truth is embedded deeply in Coke's past, and this is in their records. Georgia Pacific, right here in our backyard, right, our great neighbors. Though enabling productivity in systems, through enabling productivity in systems founded on slavery and consuming slave-tainted goods, played an intrinsic role in leveraging slave-based infrastructure and supply chain. Utilizing slaves, the legacy of slavery still is sufficed in the business environment in Georgia Pacific today. Everything from the wood mills and the timber harvesting. When you think of these Dixie cups and these materials, we want to make sure that we are engaged with them. I encourage this body to write Georgia Pacific and ask them to engage in the value of corporate social responsibility and get you resources so you can continue this great work. It's a healing. Norfolk Southern. Norfolk's very existence, routed infrastructure, and capital financing of the railroads underpinning Norfolk Southern have origins in slavery and the profits accumulated through growing and transporting goods produced by slaves. Slave people in the American South. The company in its legacy of slave-driven industry, Southern Railroad, was acquired by Norfolk Southern. These companies had steel and timber and labor. There's a list of over, and I'm not going to go through this full list, it's over 25 large corporations that have direct ties that are in Fulton County that I'm informing you in this body, and I'm asking the commission, our Rob Pitts and Natalie Hall and Marvin Arrington and Khadija and the others that are willing to step up, Bob Ellis, if we find that to be kind, to repair your neighborhood, to deal with a community that is equity. I'm going to conclude with some constructs that I encourage, and it's in my presentation, but since we don't have it connected, I want you all to look at Georgia Agricultural Snapshot by UGA, University of Georgia. And it breaks down what the state does today and how the resources are utilized for not only for business, but these businesses are propped up by free labor, free land, and access to markets. And that's a real economy. In fact, I'm going to leave you with this. When you think of economy, I want you to think of eco. That's our environment. So when we say economy, or let's say even economics, that's even more specific. When you say economics, you're saying eco, our environment. Economics is the household accounting. So we're simply talking about the household accounting of our environment. Coca-Cola's very history is based on sugarcane. Corn is their core today in the form of corn syrup. They're the largest corn producer in the world, and it's based on land that God gave everybody for free. It's a unique reality that should be compelled to repair. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Yeah. Don't leave too soon.
Yes, I would love for that, yes. Yes, I am gonna send it to you. And I'm gonna send you some of the links that are so important. They help with the research, some of it with you, Library of Congress, and some of it with Georgia Archive. I found newspapers, looked at some of the farms, and very unique.
Okay, great, and we'll have the list also that you mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Was there any other questions?
Comments? Thank you so much.
Okay, I do want to say this, LaTron.
Yes.
I do thank you for bringing that into the conversation. Because I love a good land conversation, as you know. As you know, we can
Yes.
talk for hours, but I do, love the fact that you brought that in conversation
Yes.
and putting that on people's mind and inviting that in as a part of reparations. Because oftentimes we do stop at like money, right? And understanding the value of land and how important it is to us, surpasses a lot of, thought, when we talk about reparations. So thank you
Yes.
for the land.
Yeah, you said something very unique, and that's so important, that land conversation. When you think of money, there's a place called Cordell, Georgia. I don't know if you all familiar with Cordell. Okay, watermelon, right? Some of the best watermelons in the world. Cordell, I just want to give you a quick example of what this looks like when it comes to land and money in that relationship. Cordell produces watermelon, right? And so the framework is based on this. The creator, whatever we call him to be, God, Allah, Yahweh, whatever we call him to be, God created the sun, God created the moon, God created the rain, God created the soil, God created all the seeds. No money involved. Guy happens to land on the shores of Savannah, makes his way to Cordell, he finds a seed, puts it in the ground, the seed does its natural work, and it produces a melon. And the guy go out to the field, and he chops the melon off the vine. No money involved, just labor. Takes that melon, and he hands it to our good brother Marcus. And Marcus, in reciprocity for the labor, hands the man $5. The moment Marcus handed the man $5 is when all money entered the economic system, the global economic system. We just using Cordell as an example. Now imagine if there was 10 farmers in that same community, and in that community, there was an aggregation of each farm. Let's say they had, I'm gonna keep numbers round, they had 10, let's say they had 1,000 melons, right? So that 1,000 melons aggregated into $5 becomes $5,000 per farm. And if you got 10 of them, that's $50,000 that are deposited in that local bank. And now that money's in that bank, right? That bank then turns around and loans the man a truck. But the money started from free labor and free land. So I just want to give that illustration just in your mind as you're thinking about, yeah, we have pain. There is pain involved in enslavement. And that's why I kind of was like, I want to talk about this right now, because that's pain, it's real and it's tangible and it's in our spine. But the practice was about economy. It wasn't about the pain. In fact, many of those enslaved folks or enslavers were completely oblivious to Black pain or to enslaved pain, as if these animals are like a donkey. You hit it with a whip, it moves, that's it. So I want to share in a construct, a little balance. The idea is they were talking about economies. And today we have one of the greatest nations in the world. The United States of America has a tremendous economy and has influence, and we are witnessing the conversations all over when it comes to trade. So I just want to give that illustration. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any comments before I get into a few housekeeping things? You sure? We're near the end, you sure? You better go right ahead, you've been quiet tonight.
Well, first, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I want to thank the researchers. As you were talking, the only thing that kept coming to my mind is the modern day slavery that we really don't talk about that affects Black women. The U.S. Department of Justice said human trafficking affects Black women or Black people 40%. I think that's a conversation that we need to talk about, but if researchers are presenting, that's the first thing that came to my mind with modern day slavery. That's overlooked. To Mr. President for the NAACP, thank you so much for coming as well. Ms. Thomas, I'm sorry if I'm getting your last name wrong. I know that took a lot of courage to come up here and say that, but thank you so much. I think a lot of people in our community from both sides need to come together to talk about this, but I do think if we as a community can have these healing conversations, we can move forward. And also the brother talked about the African principle. That was a nice step as well. Mr. Price, I definitely agree with you. When we have this conversation about reparations, I wish that a lot of people would talk more about land than money. But thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
First, Madam Chair, I was hoping that, this would probably be directed to Ms. Calhoun. Considering that Atlanta is in the process of, filling the seats for their reparations task force, I was hoping that maybe we could, maybe just the executive committee, if need be, get on, the schedule of the commissioners when they meet with all of the mayors of Fulton County. Considering the work that we have to do with the municipalities, I know, Madam Chair, we had spoke about a letter put out to all the mayors, but considering the commissioners meet with all the mayors, I just wanted to see, where we could go with that. That's one. I must say this. And thank you to everybody that has come out and everybody that is in attendance. Madam Chair and other members of this task force, I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm assuming you probably feel like I do. I'm glad that I am solid in knowing that the work that we're doing is meaningful, because what will happen today, since the president's here, they will put out that here we go again with a very slim crowd. How embarrassing to be in the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King, to just celebrate King Day. How embarrassing. As I look out at this empty room, which still being with much conviction of us finishing the work, and just sitting here with thoughts of how full this room will be as soon as it's time to put something on record here. You gotta forgive me, because I've been to so many King Day celebrations, and I mean, I guess people forget Dr. King was assassinated at 39 years old. Reparations was a major priority on his plate. Being from this city and knowing the different things that move us politically, it is embarrassing for the amount of times that this place has been empty. Now, I must say this, Madam Chair, many people have told me it's because of the time. They have stated that on a Thursday at 6 p.m., it is difficult for working folks to get in here, and I can understand that. But I will never cease with the shaming of a community that claims to be the cradle of the civil rights movement, that celebrates Dr. King when it comes to, as Dr. Bernice King said, the convenient way to honor her father. So again, I'm thankful for everyone on this task force, for your commitment and for those who continue to come, because whether these seats are filled or not, the work is going to get done. But I must say, I am very disappointed in a place that I call home. Here we are out here truly walking the walk of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. But so many of us would just rather, I will pause on that. And I think I had one other thing, Madam Chair. Yes, this is a great closing. As the report came out today from the Department of Justice, and I'm gonna make sure this is tied into us here, as it relates to Uvalde. For those of us who work in the area of dealing with law enforcement, and again, this is tied in here, there has been a probing of the Ferguson Police Department. There's been a probing of Baltimore. There's been a police department. There's been a probing of Chicago. There's been a probing of Louisville. And there is currently a probing of Fulton County Jail right now. Why am I saying that? Because even though Fulton County Jail's report has not come out, we seem to have a history here in this country with doing very detailed reports that lead to no accountability. So I say that to say this: all of this work that we are doing, we know towards the end of the year, we will put it in the form of demands that need to be voted on by the commissioners. But Madam Chair, I hope, and I don't even use that word too often, I just hope all of the work that we are doing here doesn't end up as one of those empty reports without there being some accountability. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. And I hope that all of us are committed to ensure that the research that is performed, that this great work will not be in vain. So I'm gonna pass it on. Anyone else want to? Yes, Ms. Austin, yes.
I am in awe of these young people here. I wish I could get my thoughts and my words together to say something intelligent. I'll leave it just that I'm in awe of you. And I hope to speak to you all. Maisie, I would love to talk with you. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I think I have a little bit of understanding of what you may be going through, just remembering the descendant of my ancestors, slave owners, and how he was, just really perplexed about speaking to me. So I'd like to share with you in a conversation, and always like to thank all of you all for coming, especially in this cold weather. It was a challenge for us. It might not say it, but I know it was a challenge for everybody in here. But thank you so much for coming. And Madam Chair and the other members of this group, I think that we should consider extending the public speaking to 3 minutes. I think it's very hard for somebody to get their thoughts out in 2 minutes. Sure. And I think if somebody comes, we're trying to get more people to come. We definitely want people to express their feelings about this. And I would be a little bit upset, and I would be feeling some kind of way if I'm trying to tell you all what I'm thinking and the seconds are being counted down. I know you're doing your job, but I think we need to extend that and give people, a decent amount of time to express themselves.
Was that a motion?
I'll make it a motion to extend the public speaking to at least 3 minutes, unless somebody would like to suggest 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? And there we have it, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda, Mike?
Just say, I don't want to go past our time, because I know we have to get out of here, but very impressive of what we heard today. On the land thing, if you know anything about me, I to the chagrin of our city leaders, I equate rental to sharecroppers. And every time I hear the word affordable housing, I ask, and I did again today, affordable for who and for how long? And if you're giving government subsidies to somebody who's renting to somebody, they're just becoming more wealthy, and the person who's renting at the end of the day has nothing. So when we talk about land, a lot of us are not going to become farmers, but we're all going to need shelter. And so I would encourage people, when your politicians talk to you about affordable housing, my question is affordable for who and for how long? And are you renting to people, or are you allowing them to purchase so that they can have their piece of the American dream? So that they're not the modern day sharecroppers. So at the end of the day, they have nothing to pass on to the next generation. And the person they rented from has everything to pass on to their heirs. So I agree with you on the land thing, but I think we need to think of a more broader aspect of housing and shelter, which in this city is ridiculously expensive. And it seems like the movement is to put everybody in an apartment and fewer people into their own homes. Thanks.
About 5 minutes left on the clock.
All right, Vice Chair Marcus Coleman encouraged me to kind of speak to why I'm here, and I appreciate that. I, like most people up here, I'm here because I believe in reparations, and that's first and foremost, I think, the most important thing for me to say. And I also appreciate Ms. Thompson lending her voice of support. And this, I appreciate also what Abby said, that it's overdue. And this comment from folks that we've lost the chance, the time is up, it was so long ago, that's to me completely irrelevant, because there's no timer or expiration on repair for human suffering. The other reason I'm here, like folks up here, is that I believe I have some experience and skill set to offer to carry out the mission of this task force. I'm a research faculty at Georgia Tech, and for the past decade, I've been working in civic data and data activism, and working with groups and studying how social movements make use of data, collect new data to make claims on government, and to mobilize resources in their neighborhood. So one example, actually, because we've been talking about land and housing, is using county backpacks data to acquire parcels on the west side to deposit into a community land trust, which the first one is in Dougherty County in the United States. So I think that work that I've done definitely is obviously very relevant to what we're doing here today. And lastly, unlike other folks up here, I'm here as an ally. I'm here so that other people in Fulton County who are white can see that they have a role, they have an opportunity to voice their support for reparations. And if anyone, I'm learning my role, I will continue to. And if anyone wants to talk about that with me, I'm here for that. And something that came up this week, if you want to talk about your white fear, express your white fragility, you can come to me for that as well. So I don't want to burden anybody else with that. So I'm really honored to be on this task force and to serve as secretary, and look forward to continuing the work.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Say this is a little housekeeping.
Yes, go right ahead.
And task force, we just need to revisit this. So I need to make a motion to revisit the agenda, or to actually tweak the agenda to we need to have the agenda to reflect that we are going to meet every first Thursday, but we will no longer meet officially via Zoom on the third Thursday. It's my understanding that give us some time to break off into the groups that are non-form and do some more work. So just let me make sure I'm put it on the record clearly. So, Madam Chair, I need to make a motion to amend the agenda to include our voting on a once a month in-person meeting on that first Thursday only. And then we also need to vote on the officers, is that correct?
Yes, next month's meeting.
Next month's meeting, okay, so if it's next month's meeting, do I need to make that motion here now, or just let me keep it at the motion for the once a month, meeting, which would be in person, for the first Thursday. So again, we would be eliminating our via Zoom on the third Thursday.
Is there a second?
I second Vice Chair.
All in favor, say aye. Put that block. Any oppositions? Nays? Abstentions? Okay, there it is. Okay, I'm looking at the clock, it's 8 o'clock. All right, so that is it. Next month, we'll be voting for officers. Look for that on the agenda. Do I have a motion to close the? Do I have a second? Any objections?
No.
All right, good night, lovely people.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations.
I had no idea that that church I was running by every day was something my grandfather established.
This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million. And then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Overnight, it's like, oh, it's no longer the quarters, now it's Lincoln Heights. Oh, so now we get to use Abraham Lincoln for our name. And you think about all the other people that they could have used, but they picked Lincoln. And I think that's sort of a stereotypical of what they do.
There wasn't any black restaurants. As far as black business and weed, it wasn't none.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Why has it been easier for other groups than us?
Because of anti-black hatred.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR room, don't tune in.